Hello, and a very good morning to what is probably quite a chaotic weekend. I don't know if anyone caught any of it or played any of it, or hopefully everyone survived all of it. But yeah, my, it was a bit crazy, wasn't it? I think this morning we can break down some charts and have a look and give what is probably needed a little bit of a post-mortem because anyone who was caught in this, it was probably, I think, the most brutal liquidation week certainly I've seen. If you look back, which other ones do we have? We had the February one, which was the Bybit hack, I believe. But yeah, outside of that, it was just utterly nuts. I mean, I've got the XRP one up here. XRP was something I accumulated, and I feel very, very dirty. But yeah, I opened my phone up on Friday night and saw XRP down here and thought, holy moly. So I grabbed my exchange and basically just clicked buy on everything I could. I had no leverage open at the time, apart from one position that I'm slightly embarrassed about. But I did some buying though, so that was quite good. Yeah, I think where do we start? I think we should start on probably Bitcoin. These are the levels that we had previously mapped out, and as we were looking at it last week, my principal band of where I've been having a lot of success in going long is inside this 108 band. This was personally, I think for me, when we saw this beginning to pull back, because originally my plan that I was looking at, all being well, no liquidation, was I was planning on looking at this liquidity area here. I thought we may see a dip into here and tease this gap here, because I know a lot of people were waiting with orders pretty much all the way down here. I know that 115 was an area that a lot of people were looking at. So was this area down here, this 110-ish, just above where we had the previous impulse. Anyone who caught the Wise Men show last week, not last week, was it last week? Yeah, it was last week. That was the area that we called, this area here, and as you can see, we all rode quite a lovely long up. So anyone who caught that with us, fair play. That was a very lovely one. As you can see, we slammed straight into this zone here. Got a new all-time high, struggled a little bit, and then that dump was very brutal. I mean, I've got the Binance chart up here, and as we know, Binance were the most brutal. It was, yeah, I don't think they come out of this particularly well, but get some coffee in me. This has been a very long morning. And as you can see, this area here, I find this really interesting. I think this is probably a very interesting move in. I know that a lot of people not only have been waiting here, but this zone here is one that a lot of people before this last impulse had been waiting for. So I think from a market making perspective, they were potentially expecting a lot of orders to sit in this zone. Similarly with this zone, and I know that below 100k, you had a lot of people waiting to get entries here. So in all honesty, it's no surprise that it went to where it did. That wick there meant that anyone with orders here, if there was spot, you may have got filled. Any leverage orders here that were highly leveraged, you'd have probably got stopped out. This zone, if you had a quite sizable leverage position, you may have been stopped out there. And certainly this area, you'd probably have been, depending on how tight or loose you run your stop loss, you'd have probably got taken out there. So they've essentially taken out all of this without really letting anyone get any orders in. And as you can see, from a daily perspective, we've climbed. If we can close this daily candle above this line, I'd be quite bullish. I think it'll be interesting to see it run back. I can probably take some of these back tests off now because some were quite successful, some were not. I quite like that one, actually. That's quite an interesting one to keep on. Yeah, and as you can see, we're now sort of having this push up. There's liquidity in here that's not really been tested. I mean, if you look at the sheer amount that is in here all the way across, it's probably going to try and chew through this a little bit before we have a big move. But we are grinding pretty nicely up. I mean, I don't want to get too bullish because, in all honesty, the long entries for this, and certainly some of the long entries I took yesterday, were in what I'm now just going to affectionately call this the wise men zone. I don't think there's any other way to say it. This zone here has just been so incredibly fruitful. We'll go over the proper wise men charts tomorrow. I'll let the man Justin walk through those, but they were, anyone who watched, they were pretty much bang on. They were pretty much absolutely slap bang on. But yeah, I'm expecting Bitcoin now to probably have quite a good rest of the month. I know that a lot of people have been looking to get into this area here. I think we may see a little bit of a retrace, but ultimately, as they say, price goes where price needs to go, and I think this will continue motoring on up. I took some long positions here. I also actually, an interesting one is I followed Dave on his idea, and I used Polymarket as well. So I've got some Polymarket bets on Bitcoin reaching 130 and 135 this month. The odds were quite good on it, and I think that's a very interesting way to play it because you sort of almost cap your downside. We did the same with ETH. We can move on to ETH in a minute, but I think ultimately for Bitcoin, I'd be looking at, firstly, from a daily level, I'd want to see us close above this level here before and gaining this level. But I don't get how you can be bearish here. I don't know if it's because I'm somehow infected with Dave's bearishness, with Dave's bullishness. But yeah, I'm quite excited for seeing how this plays out. I feel for anyone who got liquidated, because this is probably quite a brutal liquidation, and I think probably one for a longer discussion or when we move on to the alts. But I think it does highlight quite a systemic issue that I've suspected for a while in the altcoin market, and I think that's something potentially to be aware of. What else did we have? We had Ethereum, absolute complete fuckery. As we said, as long as it closes above 3,700, that keeps everyone bullish. We wicked below down to here. Some of the other charts show it a lot better, the Three Wise Men charts, but we will cover those ones tomorrow. But from my personal chart, yeah, came down. Previously, for this run up, my entry was on this weekly level, so it got filled on the run up to here. I did take another entry again on Saturday. I didn't want to take any trades on the Friday, apart from just like buying spot. So I didn't take any leverage trades on the Friday down here, but I did take some quite sizable spot positions that I'll now decide what to do with. But all are in quite good profits. And then we just had that monster candle up here, up to quite an interesting level, this weekly resistance. I think for me, I would like to see this come up and close above here. And this is an interesting liquidity zone. I think we can come up and collect a little bit in here. It's bullish. Interestingly, the wick down was quite amusing. I've got Binance charts on here again. I just think the Binance charts are just so pure fuckery. Like the size of that wick is just fairly obscene. But we had a pretty nice back test on this candle here. So yeah, ultimately, I'm quite bullish. I think that buy zone is probably, I had that before when I bottom ticked there, and I think this buy zone probably will be quite a nice area to put some orders in. perhaps not leveraged orders, unless you fancy being at risk to one of those if we see another one. But I think for spot orders, this is probably quite a good zone, this 4070 to 4050. Bit of a sniper range, but you've also got some space down here to extend that out. As you can see, the daily candle's starting to turn a little bit bearish, but I think that's to be expected after the size of that candle yesterday. So yeah, again, bullish but cautious. Solana, oh my. I got clipped on some spot orders, which was nice, but this is an area that I've had drawn out for a while that I never thought I would get a chance to buy here again. As you can see, this is quite an important area, this red box here. It's where we've seen a previous level for an impulse, and then we see it again there. So this was an area that I had marked out, and as we can see, if we extend that out, that covered the top that we saw in May and June. And if we go back all the way, you can see just how much liquidity is in this area. So go all the way across, you can see was the top before, the big impulse there, came down with support there, and then this again was where it grabbed the fuel for the Trump rally. So this area is one that I think everyone should have on their radar. And not financial advice, is probably quite a good area to just have some spot orders laid just in case, because ultimately you've got some easy invalidation here. If you buy here, you can see that if we go below here, you're probably revisiting down here or down here. But as a spot order goes, this is actually not that bad a spot to potentially play in. The other token I bought, and I feel incredibly dirty for this, but I bought some XRP. And I bought some XRP at $1.60 because I thought that price has to be wrong. And yeah, I feel very dirty. I don't particularly like that I now own XRP, or that I'm now a pseudo part of the XRP mafia. But lo and behold, I'm quite happy. I think it's a good entry. I don't know how long I plan to hold it. I probably don't particularly want to hold on to it for too long. For me, if we have a retest of this area here, I'd probably look to start dispensing of it, but my order was clipped at $1.58, I think $1.58. So here is probably an area where I'll just take half off the table, and then it's a free trade at that point. But yeah, I feel very dirty for that. The other one that I got clipped on, and I'm incredibly happy about this one, is I actually got, so I took this order out, but I had a spot order. I had a spot order in this zone here. That I was hoping when we had this run up at the start of October to come back and get tested. Like, I had a leverage long there that, in all hindsight, I took my profit far too early. I did sell some spot BNB up here. But yeah, I had some spot orders for it here that I got filled on. In hindsight, this would have also been a very good entry, but hindsight is a very magical thing, and whilst being somewhat magic, I'm not magic enough to predict the future, at least not without good probability and a chart to help. But that was a good little spot order. I mean, BNB is just the most obscene asset ever. It just only goes up. It never pulls back, pretty much. And when it does, it's just really sharp liquidation. I don't actually know where this leaves BNB, to be honest, like in my head now, because I imagine a lot of people accumulated a lot of BNB. The back test that we had here from the previous high, absolutely respected on the Saturday candle, not on the liquidation candle, which I think raises this and some of these, as you'll see as I go through some of my TA, is whilst everything's respecting the levels, it's important to only put the bids in when you're certain that the worst is over, because everything's respecting the levels. But if I'd have put, say, a leverage bid in here for a long, I'd have been taken out by this wick. But without that fuckery aside, that would have been a very, very good trade. And that's something you have to weigh up. I think there's a skill as a trader of, I like to call it knowing when to put your balls on the table. But it's almost like when to step out of the way. I saw it in ETH. So ETH, I had some bids in. The minute I saw the candle break below, if we go the hourly, I can sort of talk you through my thinking. We'll go on the 2 hour. For me, once we had this candle here, probably more on the hourly actually, because I took mine out relatively early, but we had this drop down here and I got filled on some bids in this zone. For me, once we broke below here, I triggered my stop here, because at that point it felt like it was then going to be quite easy for a market maker to begin a liquidation cascade. I think given the fact you've done the hard work here, it doesn't actually take much there. And I mean, from a Binance point of view, look at the, as my friend Justin would say, look at the fuckery on that candle. Back up to the range and down to the lows. It is just, I don't want to say the word criminal, but it's not far off. But yeah, it's knowing when to take your bids out of the line. So I took all of my bids and all of my leverage off the table on. I don't particularly like holding leverage over the weekend anyway, so I tend to take it out. But I took all of my existing bids that were in this range in, and that's when you readjust. And ultimately, it is nice to have some stink spot bids in. I got filled on some. I got filled on some horrendously smelly stink bids, which was I don't know. It always feels nice. But I think that's an interesting one. So we've gone through Bitcoin, we've been through Ethereum, we've been through Solana, we've been through XRP, we've been through BNB. The other victim was Sui, and Sui is one that I think, whilst I think it raised some really big alarms for me. I think this was the one that worried me the most. Like, I love Sui. I think this is probably an indicator of one of the issues that I have with altcoins now that got sort of exposed, is I'm not actually sure, and this is something I think we'll dive into more this week as I have people on and we speak, etc. But I think this highlights just how little natural liquidity there is in the market. I think we've seen a movement, particularly sort of at this end of the cycle, towards more, as more people trade leverage rather than buying spot. I don't think that there are many spot orders in the book. And even with the futures orders, I think because people are looking to trade futures and aren't particularly patient about it, I think what you see, and you see it in some of the liquidation maps, is the order books are really, really tight around the price. But once you go below it, there's very little underneath. And I think this highlighted, this one, I think for me, out of the majors, was the one that showed it the most. Is if you pulled the order books out of the way, there is actually, outside of the market makers, there is very little demand for Sui down here. No one has orders in. Nobody has any orders in, and I think that's probably quite a worrying sign. It's a suspicion I've had for a while that I think a lot of these altcoins are propped up by market makers' order books, and a lot of the time it's just the market makers filling their own bids. There is very little natural liquidity in this. I think the best comparison I would have is if we look at, and I know it's slightly unfair because stocks obviously are a little bit different, but you don't tend to see these movements on any of the stocks because you tend to have quite a lot of spot orders below, and you have other instruments that help prop it up. I think this highlighted probably one of the fundamental issues in crypto is that we do have a bit of an addiction to leverage, and we have an addiction to offering things more on perpetual than the underlying. And so you end up with this sort of scenario where a lot of the spot demand is actually not driven by people wanting to hold spot of the coin. It's driven by people actually like wanting to leverage trade it rather than hold it spot, which creates the disparity that we see. You have funding rates that try to remediate this, but I think we see that lack of spot demand really coming through on some of these altcoins. Anyone who did have any cash sat in accounts, I would say probably got quite fortunate and got some bargains. This makes me laugh a little bit, because I am slightly annoyed because 60 cents was where I bought Sui first time round. I was told about Sui I think it was like July or August, yeah, by one of my friends whose name begins with K. He said Sui is quite a good buy, so I bought some Sui here and started selling up here. So I have a lot to thank for that. But as you can see, it came. It's no coincidence where these candles ended up. The surprise is just how deep this wick went, and I think we can see that there was below here and this belt here, there was so little demand in the order books naturally that it just gave way to a complete fallout. So yeah, be interesting to see how it plays out. But I think that's something to be slightly, I wouldn't say worried about, but keep an eye on, particularly in the altcoin market. I'm not the keenest on alts at the minute, but I think that's something to be aware of. Who have we got? We've got Gonksy. Hello, Gonksy. Thank you. We have my mate, Mr. Justin. Thank you very much. And we've got Steve-O. Yeah, each weekly close back at support again. Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? I mean, if we have this, you can basically see. Look at this. Look at the sheer fuckery of that. You just couldn't write it, could you? Like the weekly of it to close back in line with where it was the previous 2 weeks after doing that. And you look at the fuckery on it. You had that wick that then got filled by that wick. Yeah, it's sheer fuckery, but yeah, it's definitely something. I mean, it is pretty crazy. And I like the fact it came back to essentially where we had 2 weekly closes next to each other, a weekly level, which I haven't updated my chart to include, so I will put that in. And as you can see, if you had orders on this weekly level, you'd have been pretty good entry. What else was there? Oh, yes, Link. I got filled on a very beautiful Link bid at $11. This was one that I did on my buying spree. I mean, completely fell out of its arse. But if we're talking about where things are opening and closing, it has literally closed inside this region that we saw from the previous up run. Like here, where we had that first Bitcoin all-time high of the cycle. It's closed back in this area. So it's quite a bullish one. But again, as I mentioned on Sui, how little in the order books is there below here? You can see it went all the way down to here. I think that's probably something to be slightly concerned about, but Link for me is a fundamentally good project, and I think will continue to do quite well. I'm quite happy with my spot bag down here. I probably will keep hold of it, but Link's quite a nice one to have because whilst it's a good project, you can also load it onto Femex and use it as margin for a coin margins. So I probably will be putting my link spot bag onto my Femex and just trading with that to get a little bit more link. I like to do that with ETH and Bitcoin and Solana, just as a way to sort of accumulate a little bit more. It also takes a bit of the FOMO out, because if it goes up, you're still riding some gain, but you have the opportunity at certain points to amplify that gain. Obviously, make sure you know what you're doing, otherwise you'll get wrecked. But that's quite a nice way to play with some of those majors. Adder, don't really have too much interest for this piece of garbage, but as you can see, fuckery again. Weekly candle opens basically in line with where we'd expect next to it. Ton, honestly, this thing, if it's still alive, is probably quite a good bet. But it feels, I've got very little interest in Ton. And finally, for the crypto, AVAX. Now, AVAX, again, as we said, nothing in the order books down here, but you look where the weekly opens in line with where we'd expect. We're still in that range. I like AVAX. I longed AVAX from here to here, so I probably will be looking at getting another entry in. I'm just going to be slightly cautious this week because I think we may see a little bit of a pullback at some point. Speaking of things that I did long, I longed, and I got quite fortunate because the market shut before the worst of it happened. But I longed MicroStrategy again. Now, those of you that follow me know that I quite like trading this. I felt when it got down to here, for me, anything in this at the bottom end of this box feels good. I did have quite a sizable order for 293.83. If I would have got ticked on that, that would have been quite amusing, because that was the exact entry that I had for this move. Slightly higher here, but I think this was quite a nice zone to certainly pick some up. This thing is now moving mega volatile, which is good and bad. I think it's an interesting barometer of where we are, and I think it'll be quite interesting to see how this performs. I'm not entirely sure we rerun the highs on this one. I think treasury companies are in an interesting spot now that we have the ETNs, etc. I'm not sure how much appetite there is for these when you can just buy the underlying asset, because previously MSTR was quite attractive because it traded at a premium to its Bitcoin holdings, and whilst it still does, that premium is beginning to shrink quite significantly. If anyone has any altcoins or stocks or anything they wish for me to look at, feel free. I do have about, I would say, over 100 alts charted. So if I already have it charted, I can flash it up. And then from a stock perspective, what do we have? So we're currently pre-market. So as we looked at the Mag 7, Microsoft, I mean, this one may haunt me, but look at the back test on this. Absolutely pitch perfect on Microsoft, down to 510, up to 518. What else did I got tagged into a Tesla long as well. That was quite nice. I got tagged in at 414. So around here. This one's an interesting one. I'm targeting this area up here. Be interesting to see if I get it. But that one was quite a nice one. I think Tesla is showing quite a lot of strength at the minute. Meta, again, up. I'm still targeting a little bit lower on Meta, personally. I'd like to see this area taken out. This area here, as you can see, we've got this nice little fair value gap here where it's wicked, taken some there. So eventually I would like to see it come and grab a little bit of fuel from in here. Apple, anyone who knows me knows I'm quite bearish on Apple. I think Apple could be a little bit fucked. It felt like it was topping. You got a little Bart Simpson up there, but Nvidia is probably one of the stronger ones at the minute. I am ready for this to go short. Again, look at this zone. This zone here was just pitch perfect in out. Google, again, Google's been in price discovery. I'm not particularly trading this one, so it'll be interesting to see where this lands. And what other one have we got? We've got Amazon, showing a nice little bit of strength, but Amazon has been pretty decimated. Amazon, I think, in my opinion, has been the weakest of the Mag 7, and is probably beginning to front run some of the rest of it. What else do we have? I am currently still long on Trade Desk. Anyone who watched me on Stonksy with Dave knows that this was an area that I was ever so patiently waiting for, and I got filled down here. I don't think Dave was as patient as me, but that may be quite a nice entry. I'm probably targeting around here. If we get up to here, this would be quite a nice bonus. But yeah, what else did we have? SMCI, sorry, interesting, nice little bounce. As you can see, we came down, closed this gap, pushed back up. RGTI, this thing is now finding some difficulty. I mean, this thing has just had a biblical run. Anyone who's listened to me yap about this, I was a little bit late to the game, but I was down here. Traded this a lot when it was in this range here, and then this breakout was just violent and upwards. Very interesting. Yeah, I still like that one. What else do we have? CoreWeave, as you can see, liquidity grab down. We're sort of consolidating in this range now. I'll put these back on the daily because I don't like the gaps. As you can see, yeah, this has had an upward grab. It'd be interesting to see. I see where this goes. I think we may have to drop down at some point to gather some steam, but certainly want to play out. Broadcom, doing Broadcom things, dump down, up. What do you expect from a chip manufacturer? Same with AMD. As you can see, AMD, my long position was beautiful on this. As you can see, we pulled back, retested this daily candle, and pushing back up now. Be interested to see where this goes. This serve was one that I spoke about on stream with Hugo. This thing is nuts. If you're looking for a fun stock to trade that's very volatile, this thing is nuts. These are doing robot deliveries for DoorDash, as you can see down here, purged and up. The robot deliveries are quite interesting, actually. A little bit off topic, but I read an article this week that was quite amusing. It was there's a company doing it in Ireland, and it was the most ordered items for drone delivery, and the most ordered item was eggs, which I believe is probably people testing the system to see if it can actually deliver eggs without it breaking. I found that quite amusing. What else do we have? Nebius, beautiful, beautiful stock. I don't have a huge amount of this left, but this has been very profitable so soon. What other ones do we have that are of interest? This one's interesting. This one was showing tremendous amounts of fuckery. I mean, it came down here, bounced, closed the gap. Starbucks. Ooh. Now, this is one that I chatted with about Dave, about pumpkin spice latte season, but we are seeing quite a lot of weakness in Starbucks. So it'll be interesting. When are their earnings? Their earnings are at the end of this month. So it'll be really interesting to see how this starts to behave. PPTE, this is a nuts one. I love resources stocks. I own quite a bit of this. This is doing very, very well. Iron had a mega pullback. That is one hell of a candle. Beginning to push back up through. HIMS, I mean, this thing is just like quite easy to trade the range. You've got a high here, you've got a buy here. I personally, if you're wanting to play this, you can just play this at the range until it breaks. Then you're probably looking for a rejection out of this box. Glencore, me and Justin have spoken about this one. I buy this every day. This will just continue going up. It is the millionaire factory for a reason. It will just slowly move up. Figma, Coinbase took a bit of a hammering. That is I'm going to sort of take a step back and just admire some of my TA on this, because I haven't touched this chart for a while. You can see beautiful support here, and then just a perfect rejection. Held in this range, the weekly, but this off the weekly down. I think for this, you'd be looking for a gain, certainly of this level, but you'd want to see some closes above here before it goes after the all-time highs. Same with Circle, it's slowly grinding up back into this liquidity zone. Slight weakness, so it'll be interesting to see how this begins to hold up. Treasury companies wrecked. I really like this one, but this one had quite a big aggressive sell-off up here. So we'll be interested. I think this area is potentially an interesting area to look at it should you wish to grab some more. BTBT, long liquidity grab up. BBAI, nice to see. This thing is crazy. Look at the size of that wick upwards. I think this will continue motoring upwards a little bit. ASTS, crazy. That bottom ticked the shit out of it down there. So quite happy with that. But yeah, a lot of the stocks all look the same. We're seeing some green. How long the green holds up for, I don't know. It's probably quite a good chance to take some profits. What we've got here, Futu. I've bought some options for this. I doubled down on them before the end of the market. So yeah, nice little lottery play now. Galaxy, beautiful. MP Materials, this is just nuts. What do we have? That thing is struggling. Couple here that are reserved for the newsletter, and yep. So we'll move slightly on. What do we have? We have, let's have a look at commodities. Gold, crazy. Crazy. Love gold. I think this will be really interesting to see this unfold. A lot of momentum now as we see that sort of resurgence of metals come back. Platinum, I love platinum. Bought some more on Friday. Any dips, I'm buying. Same with palladium. I actually think palladium probably has one of the best metal charts. But look at that. For me, this is the one that has so much upside left to run. Like, you're looking like a 2x if you go back to where we were 2 years ago. It's crazy. Yeah, copper, we've spoken about this. I have my thesis on the application of this for the US. As you can see, we've got some ranges marked here, ranges marked here. I've not really been trading in between this range, but we're filling in what was quite a significant drop. Oil, long oil, longed it down here, so that'll be interesting to see this one play out. Cattle, this thing only ever goes up. Look at the state of that. Lean hog, trading range, quite an interesting spot here. If you find support here, we may see a push up to clear out this 103. As you can see, a lot of liquidity above, so this may have quite a nice push up. Cocoa, now this is an interesting one to keep an eye on because cocoa is heavily down. I've not traded this one for a while, but as you can see, we're getting back to some really interesting levels. So I would certainly say keep an eye on this because eventually this will find a bottom and this will bounce. I don't think that time is now, but I think we will see that soon. Wizard of Orange Juice, very tight consolidation range. So this will be really interesting to see how it plays out. Rhodium, I actually think this will just continue motoring up. This is another good one that I'd recommend looking into. And then what have we got? Altcoins. This thing, basically, you can see how nobody wanted this thing. This thing became basically worthless and is now being propped back up again. What other shit alts do we have? Not a shit alt. I love Berachain. This thing, look at that, respecting. If we go on to the video tickers, all of the ones that I have done videos on, you can see ENA destroyed but reclaimed. Hype, I bought some of this. I bought some hype down here. I think that will continue doing quite well. We have Berachain. Look at that. Beautiful. Off the monthly, back straight up. Anyone who got an entry on this, fair play. I bought some. It looks pretty good. Tau, again, pushing highs. This thing, great opportunity if you had some buy orders down here. I bought some Glimmer, last chance saloon for this thing. Nobody wanted this thing. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Dash just motors up. I actually recorded a video for Dash yesterday, so that'll be going up today. What else do we have? Lister. See what I mean with the TA is just, it's so predictable. Into there, down to here, back up to here. You just couldn't write it. Pengu, not a huge amount of strength, but it's interesting to see it beginning to slowly motor back upwards. Aero, you can tell with the size of these wicks, some of these tokens that people didn't want and didn't have in the books, because I mean the state of that is just ridiculous. Ondo's the same, completely down. Peak, I was really surprised at how well Peak held up. I really like this project, and I think this will continue to do well. Slightly weaker today, but I think it had a really nice run here, so this is probably quite nice that we filled in this area here. I bought some more cow. Look at that. Perfect retest of the weekly. Fantastic project that I think will continue motoring up. And then we're just getting into some of the low cap shitters here. Yeah. Crime. Yeah. I bought some wormhole. Look at that. I think I'm ready for this to run back. I also bought some plasma. I thought this thing, I had my eye on this thing last week when it was here. Here was just an even nicer entry. Aster, bottom ticked the shit out of it. This was my last chance saloon zone. As you can see, we bounced off. We come back to my original entry. So it'd be interesting to see how that plays out. I bought some orderly. The buybacks start on this soon, so this is definitely one to keep an eye on. I think this will do quite well. Bought some cake. Look at that back test. Perfect, if not for that, but you can't account for that. Great little dip into the fuel supply here. I think this wouldn't surprise me if you rerun that fairly soon. What do we have? We've got Metal Dow. Nice. Compound. Mask. See, stuff like Compound and Aave I'd be slightly wary of because I don't know what the damage of the liquidation will be on some of the lending protocols. Zcash taking a breather. Jelly. This is a favorite of my man, Dr. Crypto. Held up incredibly well. FET, this thing just got pretty much destroyed. So it'll be interesting to see if that can begin to find a recovery. I bought some Mo. That's doing well. I also bought some Zen. That's also slowly grinding up. So, and Alki, look at that. Perfect into this zone. I really like this token, so this is certainly one to keep an eye on. But I think that's it. Unless anyone has any altcoins in particular, I think we can wrap it up there. And yeah, thank you for joining me on Macro Mondays. Hope everyone is sane, solvent, and ready to go for what is quite an exciting week ahead. Yeah, I think it's interesting, but yeah, see how it plays out. But make sure you tune in tomorrow because I've got a busy day tomorrow. We have on the stream in the morning, we have the Wise Men of Crypto joining me. That'll be really interesting to get those boys' take on it all. Justin will show his charts. They were pretty much bang on point. And then Friday afternoon, I have I'm joined by Will from Wolf Crypto. Really excited for that. He's a massive in the deep in space, owns several deep in businesses. So that'll be a different lens. He's less of a trader and more of a deep in guy. So it'll be really interesting to learn more about that space, as I know deep in isn't something that a lot of people are fully aware of. I think whilst it's seen by many sort of as a trading category, it'll be really interesting to see sort of how this works, how this works, and how people are making viable businesses in that space. yeah, and then Wednesday we've got Haller on to teach us ICT. Thursday I've got my man Dr. Crypto, the craziest man in crypto. He's a character, and I think crypto needs characters, so he'll be a really, really good guest. I'm really looking forward to that one. And then join me on Friday for the close, where we will review the week and see how this week played out. But for now, thank you very much for tuning in. Wish you all the best. Please don't get wrecked. I think we have quite a good few days ahead of us. So, thank